Welcome to the NCDWI Guide podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the NCDWI guy, Jake Minnick.
Hello, fellow freedom fighters, and welcome to episode 150 of the NCDWI Guide podcast. On today's episode, we are continuing our three-part series on maximizing your time, maximizing your day, maximizing your life. Last episode 149, Game of Seconds, was really about the mindset of why it is so important to maximize your life, maximize your time, especially as lawyers. Today's episode, I'm going to give you 5 tips for maximizing your time. So kind of the practical implementation from last week's mindset episode. And then next week on episode 151, we are going to look at a book that has really been revolutionary for me called The Slight Edge, and talk about the way to use that book in the practice of law in building your business and in building your a better you as an attorney. So another practical episode following last week's kind of mindset focused episode. So very excited to jump into these 5 tips. Before I do that, I want to take a minute to just briefly invite everybody that's listening to this podcast to the inaugural Freedom Fighter Summit in Asheville, North Carolina on October 19th and 20th of this year. It is going to be, I'm going to tell you, it's going to be an amazing event. It's in person only, no virtual. This is getting us back to being together. It's going to be an amazing conference on branding, marketing, building a better experience for your clients, culture, team, financial improvement. All of these things are going to be discussed at the summit. And in addition, it's going to have some of the best and brightest business minds in the criminal defense world in the state of North Carolina at this conference in October. So if you want to check out the summit, go to minnicklaw.com/summit, minnicklaw.com/summit. Podcast listeners can use the promo code NCDWI guy at checkout for $150 off the registration fee, the ticket fee. This is going to be an amazing experience that you're not going to want to miss out on. Tickets for the event are going quickly. We have 100 seats available. It's capped at 100. One of the speakers that I'm going to talk about here in just a second, they have a kind of like max attendance allowance at 100. The venue that we're doing this at really does not have space for more than 100 people. So of the 100 available spaces, 24 are taken at this point. So almost a quarter of the registrations have happened, and we are months out from the conference. So these tickets are going to get sold. The speaker that I just mentioned, it's really a group that I'm very excited about to have at the summit, is the Ritz-Carlton leadership team. They will be there. This has not been announced publicly, so you podcast listeners are getting to be like the first people to hear about the Ritz-Carlton leadership team. But they are going to spend a significant time, an entire afternoon, talking to us about how to build a wow experience for your client. And this is a group of people that knows how to build a wow experience, the Ritz-Carlton group. And so their leadership team is going to come in and talk to us about that. Very pumped about the Ritz-Carlton leadership team being there. The other speakers that we have already announced and the ones that are yet to come are also incredible. So it's going to be a jam-packed 2-day event. And you're just going to get to hang out with some of the coolest people that you're going to meet in the legal industry at this summit. So go check that out, minniclaw.com/summit. Again, use the promo code NCDWI guy at the checkout to get $150 off your ticket. So back into today's content. Again, I'm going to give you 5 tips for building your schedule and maximizing your time. But to kind of enter into our discussion for today, I'm going to talk about a story that's in the book Will. This is by Will Smith. Loved Will Smith, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air growing up, but his book is pretty interesting. It's got some really cool points about life in this book. But he starts with this story called The Wall. And I'm just going to read a little bit from this because I think this is a good place to kind of start when we think about our schedule, our weekly schedule. When I was 11 years old, my father decided he needed a new wall on the front of his shop. It would be a big wall, roughly 12 feet high by 20 feet long. The old wall was crumbling and he was sick of looking at it. But rather than hire a contractor or construction company, he thought it would be a good job for my younger brother Harry and me. Daddy-O did the demolition. I remember looking at the gaping hole in excruciating disbelief. I was utterly certain that there would never be a wall there again. Every day for nearly a year, my brother and I would go to my father's shop after school to work on that wall. We did it ourselves. We dug the footing, mixed the mortar, and carried the buckets. I still remember the formula: 2 parts cement, 1 part sand, 1 part lime. Harry was in charge of the hose. We mixed the pile with shovels out on the sidewalk and then fill 2-gallon buckets and lay our separate bricks. We did it without any rebar or wood forms, just one of those levels with the water bubble in the middle. If you know anything about construction, you know this is a loony-ass way to do this. If we can keep it real, this is chain gang kind of labor. Today, we would just call Child Protective Services. This is a job so tedious and unnecessarily long that what ended up taking 2 kids most of a year would have only taken a teen of grown men a couple of days at most. My brother and I worked weekends, holidays, vacations. We worked through the summer that year. It didn't matter. My father never took a day off, so neither could we. There were so many times I remember looking at that hole totally discouraged. I couldn't see how this was ever going to end. The dimensions became unfathomably large in my mind. It seemed like we were building the Great Wall of West Philly, billions of red bricks stretching infinitely into some distant nowhere. I was certain that I would grow old and die still mixing concrete and carrying those buckets. I just knew it. But Daddy-O wouldn't let us stop. Every day, we had to be there mixing concrete, carrying buckets, laying bricks. It didn't matter if it was raining, if it was hot as hell, if I was mad, if I was sad, if I was sick, if I had a test the next day. There was no excuses. My brother and I tried to complain and protest, but it made no difference to Daddy-O. We were trapped. This wall was a constant. It was permanence. Seasons changed, friends came and went, teachers retired, but the wall remained. Always the wall remained. One day, Harry and I were in a particularly stank mood. We were dragging our feet and grumbling, impossible this and ridiculous that. Why do we have to build a wall for anyway? This is impossible. It's never going to get done. Daddy-O overheard us, threw down his tools, and marched over to where we were yapping. He snatched a brick out of my hand and held it up in front of us. Stop thinking about the damn wall, he said. There is no wall. There are only bricks. Your job is to lay this brick perfectly, then move on to the next one, then lay that brick perfectly, then the next one. Don't worry about no wall. Your only concern is one brick. He walked back into the shop. Harry and I looked at each other, shook our heads. That dude's a kook. And we went back to mixing. Some of the most important lessons I've ever received, I've had to learn in spite of myself. I resisted them, I denied them, but ultimately the weight of their truth became unavoidable. My father's brick wall was one of those lessons. The days dragged on, and as much as I hate to admit it, I started to see what he was talking about. When I focused on the wall, the job felt impossible, never ending. But when I focused on one brick, everything got easier. I knew I could lay one damn brick well. As the weeks passed, the bricks mounted, and the hole just got a little bit smaller. I started to see the difference between a task that feels impossible and a task that feels doable as merely a matter of perspective. Are you paying attention to the wall, or are you paying attention to the brick? Whether it was acing the tests to get accepted into college, whether it was acing the test to get accepted into college, hitting it big as one of the first global hip hop artists, or constructing one of the most successful careers in Hollywood history, in all cases, what appeared to be impossibly large goals could be broken down into individually manageable tasks, insurmountable walls comprised of a series of conceivably layable bricks. And that right there is from Will's book, titled Will. And if you haven't read it, you should go get a copy, because there's some good lessons learned from that. But I think it's a good, that story of the brick wall is important for us, because here's the situation. And here's what I think most of us do. If we look at kind of what we want to accomplish 5 years down the road, there's really no timetable. There's no ability to kind of visualize how to make that happen. Even when we like chunk our time into more manageable pieces, here's what we're going to do this quarter. Here's what my schedule looks like this week. A lot of times we are not laying a perfect brick when it comes to the week by week schedule. And if we want to lay a perfect daily brick, if we want to lay a perfect brick today, we have got to get more aggressive, more thoughtful about how we want our calendar, our schedule to look. So I have a personal mantra that if it's not on my calendar, it's not happening. If the event is not on my calendar, it's not going to happen. If there's something on my honey-do list, or work office to-do list, or an email that comes in that requires that I do something, if it's not in my calendar, it's not happening. So you have to pay attention to how you're organizing your time in your calendar. And the easiest way to do this is to have a weekly planning session. And this is something that, really like dawned on me rather recently, that having a weekly planning session is so critical. When we live and die by our schedules, by our calendars, by our time as attorneys, it's kind of unfathomable that I would not spend regular time every week sitting down and really trying to plan out, how am I going to be successful this week? Looking at my calendar. So finding a time on Saturday or Sunday, or maybe the Friday before the upcoming week, sitting down and having a planning session of how am I going to attack each day next week? What are the things that need to get done? What is the top priority? Which clients do I have cases coming up for? How is my paralegal support staff going to help me execute this game plan? If you're not doing that planning time, you're going to be going into the next week on defense as opposed to going into the next week on offense. And defense, maybe on defense you can keep the other side from scoring points, but you're just kind of at the end of the day hoping that you don't get scored on. On offense, you're about winning, you're about scoring points. So you want to be on the offensive side of your schedule and not playing defense. So practical tip number one, set aside time over the weekend, the week before your upcoming week, and sit down and meticulously plan out your schedule. Number two, this is particularly for those of you who are like me that are not good multitaskers. And I don't think that there are truly many great multitaskers. I think there are people that can Shift gears a little bit easier and faster, but we really, even when there's 8 things that we're doing at once, we're really only doing oftentimes 1 or 2 of those, and then kind of very quickly moving on to other ones to kind of make it appear like we're doing more than we actually are in terms of that multitasking. But I'm not a multitasker in any way, shape, or form. And so for me, the best work comes in big chunks of work time. So I have on my schedule big chunks of work time where there is going to be the ability to kind of sit down and sink my teeth into a problem, an issue, a project, a podcast, whatever it might be, to sit down and sink my teeth into something without distraction. You have to get rid of distraction. You got to have uninterrupted time, distraction-free time. And this may be something that's easier for you to do outside of the office. But if you're doing it in the office, make sure that the other people in the office know that your time is on do not disturb. Put your cell phone onto do not disturb mode. There is on every iPhone, I'm assuming that this is true of any smartphone, do not disturb feature for specifically work time. And it will keep calls from coming your way. It'll keep texts from coming your way unless you have people that are allowed through that barrier, like my wife is allowed through the do not disturb zone. But put that on your phone. Have a sign on the outside of your door that indicates that you are not free to be interrupted during that kind of big chunk of work time. It's not enough to be just busy. You need to have this intentionality when you are working. And this is true for lawyers. We're really good at being busy. As Americans, we're really good at being busy, but are we really good at getting things accomplished that are important? A lot of times, no. And it's because of a lack of intentionality. On this point, number 2, Henry David Thoreau said that it's not enough to be busy. The question is, what are we busy about? And that's what these big chunks of time are concentrated on. So put those big chunks of time on your calendar and then think about what needs to be put into those big chunks of time. And, maybe you're thinking, well, I can't do that. I don't have time. I've got to hit 5 counties today. I've got to call clients back, for 2 hours at this particular time, or driving back and forth in between. I've got this appointment for my car at this. I just don't have that kind of time. If you put it into your schedule, you'll have the time. Again, if it's not on your calendar, it's not happening. You've got to find a time, and it's best if it can be the same time every week, so that you can sit down and work on your business instead of in it, so that you can plan your cross-examination of next week's jury trial, so that you can work on marketing, so that you can work on whatever it is that's going on in your particular office. But you're going to need that time, and you need to do your best to try to find a space in your schedule that is consistent, so that you will make that big chunk of time a priority. Again, going along, and this is point number 3, kind of going along with that Henry David Thoreau quote, which is, it's not enough to be busy. The question is, what are we busy about? Take your top 3 priorities. Take your top 3 priorities for the week. And then every day that you come into the office, identify what are your top 3 priorities for the day. What are the things that, if you got those 3 things knocked out, would have the biggest impact on your life for the day? This might be something extremely small, or it might be a very big project. And so maybe you have to break that big project down into bite-sized chunks. But we, again, are so often on the defensive. If you're not sitting down and writing out, and self-help book after self-help book talks about the importance of prioritizing. Military leaders, this is one of the major themes that they get consistently talked about, is you've got to prioritize and execute. If you execute before you prioritize, you will spend a ton of time in areas that have little impact. If you're executing without the priority, you can be busy, you can work hard, but you're not going to get things done that are going to truly advance your business, truly advance your life, your health, your financial stability. All of these things require priority. So prioritize the top 3 things of the week during your weekly planning session, and then each day prioritize your top 3 items for the day. Your top 3 things to get done. Have a list. There is a quote from Chip Kelly that everybody has the same amount of time during the day. You can either spend your time or invest your time. I love that. Everybody has the same amount of time during the day. You can either spend your time or invest your time. I think that this is going to go into point number 4, which is schedule time for interruptions. And you're going to see how this is connected in just a second. But I think that this is such an important point, because so often when we sit down and think about our day or plan our schedule, we think, how are we spending our time? How am I spending my time? And normally it's with these different things that are pulling on my time, different things that I'm obliged to do, these different responsibilities that are pulling me different ways. If you change that word spend with the word invest, then it is going to be a monumental mindset shift in terms of how you organize your calendar. Think about that. Think about if you were just sitting down with your spouse, having or your business partner, whoever it might be that you might be talking about finances with, and think about if you were having a conversation about how you're spending your money versus how you're investing your money. It would be a very different conversation. So when we sit down and plan our schedule, when we think about the difference between how am I spending my time and how am I investing my time. So we'll get back to this quote here in just a moment with point number 4. But again, this is schedule time for interruptions. We all expect to walk into the office and not have any fires to put out, have everything go exactly according to plan, have no clients that have problems going on in their life or that we've screwed their case up, no interruptions from our spouse or children, no out of work meetings that we're going to have to go to. And that is so silly, because all of those things are coming every day, or at least routinely. All of these interruptions, somebody in your office that needs to talk to you about a personal issue, somebody calling about a driving privilege that you got for them 5 years ago. I mean, there's always going to be these interruptions. And so if you don't have time assigned to deal with these interruptions, it's going to feel like they're constantly throwing off your schedule, because to some extent they are. To some extent, you do not have time for the interruptions, but it's only because of poor planning. You have to plan for interruptions. So build some time into your day where there are planned interruptions, or maybe even invited interruptions. Tell other people in your office, this is the time that I'm available to talk about cases, to talk about the upcoming schedule for next week, to discuss any problems that we're experiencing at the office, to talk about our big office move that's coming next month, whatever it might be. Have some planned interruptions, because those fires are coming. And the reason that I think that this quote hit home to me is, I was kind of talking about this with my business coach, Ali Ghaffari, who's going to be, again, one of the speakers at the Freedom Fighters Summit, and basically about interruptions that would happen at the office, and how do I kind of like figure my out how to respond to these or deal with these. And he said, that when you have interruptions from somebody that needs assistance, needs help, You can do a ton of relationship building by responding quickly to those interruptions. So if we go back to Chip Kelly's quote, everybody has the same amount of time during the day. You can either spend your time or invest your time. And when somebody would come in and interrupt the work that I was doing, a lot of times I saw this as, you are a inconvenience. You are a problem. You are spending my time, or another way of saying that is you're wasting my time, right? Spend and waste. You're taking, you're stealing, you are robbing me of my time. When that mindset shift went from spend to invest, this now becomes, okay, well, how can I immediately help this person through this difficulty that they're dealing with, this problem client that they're dealing with, this legal issue that they're dealing with? There is a massive amount of opportunity to really build somebody up in that moment, to really change your coworker, your client, somebody, a colleague. You have the ability to change their life if you can respond to those fires that they are experiencing quickly. Because otherwise, if you're holding up the response time to responding to that fire, it continues to build on their end. They continue to feel that pressure. And so whatever you can do to relieve, and it doesn't always mean you go and solve that person's problems or that you can do anything about it. But when you look at that interruption that is planned as an opportunity to invest into that person, it is a total different way of responding to those interruptions that are without a doubt coming your way. So number 4, schedule time for interruptions. And finally, number 5, and this is kind of similar to the top 3 priorities, but its own kind of in the moment thing, is that you want to put first things first. So in terms of your top 3 priorities, don't leave those till the end of the day. If you've identified your top 3 priorities, don't leave that until 4:30 in the afternoon. You need to attack those top priorities early. Put first things first. Put your priorities first on your schedule. Attack them in the morning. We wake up and our brains generally come into work ready to go before the fires have started to mount, before the interruptions start to build. Attack the things that are important. So often when I started practicing, one of the first things that I would do when I wake up in the morning would be to check emails and start responding to client emails. And it was a huge waste of my kind of early morning mental energy. A lot of times responding to these kind of emails did not require a lot of mental work. And so I was wasting that like kind of best part of the day mentally on responding to these kind of like routine emails. When you're responding to emails, you're that's interruption. If you're checking email throughout the day, you are inviting all the time interruption. If you don't have specific times when you are looking at your calendar to attack email. On my calendar, I've got two times that I try to check email during the day. Sometimes I have to, look at the email to see if something that I'm expecting is coming in, but I try to only look at the email twice a day, because otherwise, anytime something comes in, whether it's important or not, whether it's spam or not, it is diverting your attention from what you are doing. You are allowing yourself to be constantly interrupted if you have notifications going off on your phone, on your computer, whether it's email or some sort of social media notification, whatever it might be. You should have time for those things. And a lot of them might even be very much like important to your business, but you cannot allow yourself to be constantly interrupted. And so that's the real issue. That's the real problem that happens when we have our email constantly up, but also when we start the day off with email, is we start the day off with interruptions. Maybe that's 5 interruptions, maybe it's 50 interruptions that have come in overnight, but it's not a good space to start with interruptions. So with the chunks of time that you have, try to put those in the morning, first things first, because if you wait till the afternoon, I'm telling you, a lot of the time, something else is going to creep in and steal that time that you have set aside to do the important things. If you have your top 3 priorities identified for the day, don't wait until 4:30, 7, 9 o'clock at night to do those most important things. Get them done, get them crossed off early in the day, and then take care of the things that are not a priority. So those are 5 tips for maximizing your schedule, for filling the unforgiven minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run. Hope this has been helpful, and I look forward to talking with you about the slight edge next time. If you found the information in this podcast to be valuable, I simply ask that you pay it forward and share this podcast with another member of the legal community. Also, if you would leave us a rating or a review on whatever platform you are listening on, I would greatly appreciate it.